All right, everyone, this is Stephanie, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I have that it's just a minute or so after 2, so we always like to start as close to on time as possible. I want to welcome you to the American Association of Museums online advocacy training series. And this one we're doing social media as advocacy tools. So we'll be talking a lot about how you can use social media for advocacy, not just at the federal level, but at the state level and within your communities as well. So to do that, here are our topics. We're going to tell you a little bit about the online training session. I know some people, oops, I noticed that my screen is paused. Okay, there we go. I know that some people have not necessarily done one of these, so we'll talk a little bit about the logistics of it. I'll share with you who's speaking. That's me. You'll get to see a little picture of me. We'll talk about the traditional advocacy model, the new Web 2.0 approach, 3 strategies you can employ, and some ideas for you for next steps. So let's get started. First of all, about the online training session. Very first thing people wonder is what's happening. Basically, there has been a window that's popped up on your screen, and it's showing my computer, and it's showing my PowerPoint. So don't worry, I won't be checking my emails or that sort of thing. You'll be able to see just the sites and the PowerPoint that we'll be reviewing today. Secondly, everyone has joined in mute-only mode, so that means that although you can hear me, we will keep everyone in the mute mode simply because there's usually a lot of background noise if we have people online and able to hear the noises in their office. But if you want to ask a question, the good news is that there's a Q&A box, and if you're not seeing something that says questions on your screen, there's 2 things you can do. First of all, it may be that your navigation screen is minimized, so you might see a little box with a white arrow on a red background. If you click on that, you'll get the full screen that will give you the Q&A box. The other option is that you could click on the view navigation and then click on questions, and that will open it up. Alternatively, you'll see next to the word questions, there might be a little plus sign. All you need to do is click on that. And of course, if we don't get your question or if you have additional questions that weren't answered during the session, we're always happy to address those afterwards, so have no fears. One of the questions we always get right up front is whether the recording will be available and this PowerPoint. It absolutely will, and I'm going to take you to the page. This is the online advocacy training page that's got links to all of the different recordings we've been doing and the various PowerPoints. So you should definitely take a look at this. We've done a series of them, so there may be some useful ones from the past that you haven't had a chance to review yet. So those are the details about the online training session. And the next question I always get is who is speaking. And so this is a picture of me. I am Stephanie Vance. I am the advocacy guru. And my experience is in Washington, D.C., being a congressional staff person and also a lobbyist with National Public Radio, helping communicate with elected officials. And so as a staff person, I often had people who were attempting to communicate at me and sometimes not doing it as effectively as I would have liked. So I wrote a book, which you can see here, Citizens in Action. And my goal with this book was to make sure that citizens could be effective advocates. So that was my goal, and I'm really pleased to be able to share some of this information with my friends in the museum community. Now, my navigation screen has for some reason disappeared, so I'm going to need to go back and find it here. There it is. All right. So let's go back to the show. Sorry about that, folks. Found it. All is well. All right. So where are we starting from? And I want to start by taking you to a quick poll. Because it always helps me get a sense of where people in the organization are, what kinds of experiences you've had on some of these issues, and of course who in your office is gathered with you to watch the session, if anyone. So you'll see that I've just opened up a poll asking how many people are gathered with you to watch the session. Is it 1, and maybe that shouldn't say just me, but you alone, which is exciting, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 6 to 10, or more than 10. And this gives us a sense of beyond the folks who are registered, who else might be participating in the call. We have 77% of the votes in. We'll wait a few more moments to get more votes in. 84%. Certainly don't want to curtail voting in this environment. Just a few more seconds. Want to make sure everyone has the chance. All right, we've got 94% of the votes in. I think that's a pretty good percentage. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share with you the results. And so most of us are watching this on our own, which is great, although some of us have 2 or 3 folks. And I want to encourage you, if you are watching it on your own, but you might have other staff people who are interested, they can either register separately or, you can all have a little webinar party in your office, because we do want to share this information with as many people as possible. All right, so I also want to ask a couple other questions about your knowledge of social media and your personal participation in it. So the next poll asks, how much have you personally participated in social media? This is not necessarily connected to your role in the museum community, but as a human being who may be on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, shares pictures through Flickr or any of the social media of the photo sharing sites, YouTube, that sort of thing. And we have 75% of the votes in. Gosh, I wonder if we could even count this webinar as social media. Perhaps not. This is an educational tool. All right, I got 97% of the votes in, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share with you the results. And you'll see that, wow, a whopping 87% of us do social media either often or all the time, which is really not surprising, but it's interesting because in the last several years I've definitely seen that percentage go way up. 13% of us do it rarely, and hopefully we'll give you some ideas for how to engage a little bit more and utilize it to engage people in your community and to connect with legislators. All right, and then the final poll that I'm going to ask you about is, and this is a separate question, how much your museum has participated in social media. So not just you personally, or social media for advocacy, excuse me. And the key here is that I think there's a real difference between what we do sort of personally on social media and what we do connected with advocacy. And given the high percentages of people that are participating in social media, I hope that some of these ideas we talk about are going to help you translate your advocacy efforts to your social media. And we'll wait for the votes to come in on that. We have 79% of the votes in, 82%, 85%. Couple more seconds. I know there's a lot of polling. All right, we'll go ahead and close the poll and share with you the results. So you'll see that although we have a lot of people who are personally involved in social media, a lot of us don't use this for advocacy, and I think there's a lot of opportunities here to connect your constituents with legislators, to connect with people in the community, and just to generally make sure that the museum message gets out there. So great, because this is the perfect thing we're going to be talking about today. Everyone's in the right place. All right, so that's where we're starting. And the old advocacy model, I want to share with you kind of what I think about this, because I think this is all kind of how we see advocacy. We start here, we push messages out to elected officials. There's passive or no listening by them. We're frustrated at the lack of progress. Sometimes we stop right there, but often we will push more messages out. There's passive or no listening. We get frustrated at the lack of progress. You sort of get the point here. I think that the new Web 2.0 approach is much more effective in engaging not just elected officials, but the people in your community that you really want to have connect. So I mentioned here messages that pull. These are different than push messages. A lot of time in advocacy, we are pushing messages out. We are sending in emails. We are sending in other kinds of messages. And I don't want to suggest that that's inappropriate, because I think it's a great way to start. But what Web 2.0 is all about is getting people to be pulled into what you're doing. So they choose to go to your Facebook page. They choose to link up to your Twitter feed. They choose to be connected with you on LinkedIn. And we'll talk about all those different options. But you'll probably get a much smaller percentage of people that are willing to be pulled in. But those people who are willing to be pulled in are going to be far, far more active in advocacy efforts and in even just efforts to promote your museum. And also these Web 2.0 approaches tend to be constituent and coalition-based. People who are pulled in tend to be people from the community. They also tend to be people who are associated with other coalitions that might be interested in the work that you do. And this is very valuable for advocacy because all elected officials want to hear from people in their districts and people who are connected with coalitions that they care about, because it delivers the message that these are issues that are not important only to the museum community, but to the other folks that you have involved in your work. Also, Web 2.0 approach is really about relevant expertise. People go to these pages, people connect with these pages, people are pulled into these pages because they feel that you have some expertise, even if it's simply providing information on what's happening at the museum or the different kinds of experts you have coming in to talk about different issues. This is why people get pulled in. And if you have these three combinations, you'll find that you've got a much more engaged and active group of people, whether it's your advocates or the elected officials that you're trying to reach out to. So given that background, we want to talk about the three strategies that we think are most effective for advocacy and Web 2.0 success. And as part of this, we're going to be moving back and forth to different websites and providing you with some information on research, and also going to some of these social media sites and showing you how they work and what's the best way to utilize them for advocacy. Before I do that, I'm just going to check in and see if we have any questions at this point. And I do have a question. What are some good ways to encourage people to become fans of your organization? And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through these three strategies. But if that question doesn't get answered, make sure that make sure you let me know if I didn't give you a good answer, and we'll address it at the end of the session. And again, if you want to ask questions, you can just find the Q&A box. And in that Q&A box, you can type in a question, and that will get directly to me. All right, so our three strategies. Strategy number one, and I've alluded to this, but it's to cultivate the powerful 1%. And this is based on a common myth, which is we won't get any attention unless we have thousands of advocates involved. Basically, I think people are sometimes a little bit misinformed, thinking that advocacy is always a numbers game, that you need to have 1,000 people advocating before people at the state or federal level are really paying attention. And actually, a lot of research demonstrates that it's not a numbers game, it's how many people are willing to be personally and actively involved. So a legislative office may receive 1,000 emails, but if they receive 10 communications from people in the community that are more substantive, for example, doing a site visit or having a meeting in the district or a personal phone call to a staff person that handles these issues, that tends to be far more powerful and more effective. So the nice thing about social media is that as you're pulling in people who are willing to review your Facebook page, review your Twitter feed, be connected in that way, those are really the powerful 1%. And I think that's the power of Web 2.0, is you can find those people and really get them actively and personally engaged. So never feel like, well, sort of where this myth came about is, you know, you have an email newsletter list, you've got maybe 1,500 people that you're pushing that out to, and you start a blog and only 200 people are signed up to read that, and you think, well, you know, that's not effective. But the 1,500 people who you're pushing the newsletter out to, probably not all of them are reading it. Probably 5 to 10% are reading it. And when you have people who are willing to sign up for your blog, that means that they're actually interested and probably actually reading it. Now, I did mention some key research on this issue. The National Journal did an article, and again, if you're wondering about these particular pages, all these links are available in the PowerPoint. So when you can download the PowerPoint, you'll be able to click on the sites and get that information. But this was a study done by the National Journal, and they did a lot of in-depth interviews with different advocacy professionals. They also talked to Capitol Hill staffers to try and get a sense of what really worked in terms of communicating with the Hill. Now, it's not necessarily social media focused, but what it really does, although you'll see there is a comment here on the advent of virtual advocacy, what it really does is it focuses in on that idea of how personalized, even fewer numbers of personalized communications can be the most effective in talking to Capitol Hill. So given that perspective, the other thing I want to share with you, and people who've been on the call before may have seen this, but this was a report that was done by the Congressional Management Foundation, and it found some very similar things. It did a similar survey of congressional staff, and it found that what really influences congressional staff are the personalized communications from constituents. So again, I don't want to make it sound like personalized communications, it's got to always be an in-person communication. What I mean is that you are cultivating those people who might be more willing to do something that's going to be directly connected with the elected official and really be that much more powerful. So how to do it? One really effective way, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but if you're using Facebook, if you're using Twitter, if you're using LinkedIn, if you're using some of these tools, YouTube we've already talked about, find out who on those sites are already talking about your museum. I think a lot of times we forget to take this step. We sign up for Facebook and we forget to type in the name of our museum and see if anyone else is talking about it. But you might find that you've got friends groups, trustees, board members, frequent visitors who already have Facebook pages, who are already making comments about this. And those are people that you can go find and connect with through the social media applications. So for example, if you find that a friend group has members who are on their personal pages connecting, talking about the museum and maybe a wonderful exhibit they went to, you can find that group, you can find that information by doing a simple search on these social media applications, and then you can comment on that. You go in even as a personal communication and say, hey, I saw your comment on our exhibit, really appreciate your support. So I think some of these tactics, even just finding out who's already talking about it and commenting on their comments can be a great way of cultivating them, and then when it's time to do some advocacy, getting them to really be a lot more involved. All right, strategy number 2 for being effective is to stop using carrier pigeons. Actually, this picture here is kind of an example of a carrier pigeon. I'm not sure I've seen this particular gadget for quite a while. But basically, a lot of times we focus on handwritten letters, a personalized letter, even email sometimes can be seen as a carrier pigeon. Most of the staff people on the Hill, research has shown, think that email is an old-fashioned method of communication. I don't want to say that you shouldn't respond to action alerts through email. You absolutely should, but then use that information in the action alert to further deepen your communication with the audience, whether it's through additional personalized communications, site visits, phone calls, or whether it's through some of the social media applications we're going to discuss. So I want to open another poll because this is a really interesting statistic to me. How many technological gadgets would you guess you own? And you don't necessarily need to count them all up in your head. Just take a guess. And when I say technological gadgets, I mean everything. Computers, radios, anything that is beyond sort of the basic pen and paper kind of approach. So just take a wild guess what you think it is. And I actually have some numbers on what those averages are. And we've got 66%, 74%. Everyone owns at least one, and 2 actually, because you're on a phone and you're on a computer. We've got 80% of the votes in, 83%, 86%. We'll wait a few more seconds. All right, we've got a good percentage in, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. Now you'll see that most of us, a plurality, think that we own 6 to 10 technological gadgets. And then we've got 22% 11 to 20, 13% 21 to 30, 3% 31 to 50. These are obviously the technology junkies like I am. I probably own more than 50, much to my husband's dismay. 25% 0 to 5. Actually, research shows that if you consider all of your gadgets The average that people own is 25. So I'd encourage you to think about this, perhaps go home and just kind of take stock of all the technology in your life. And the reason why I raise this is because these really are the new methods of communication, and not just interpersonally, but also with your communities and with the elected officials you're trying to influence. So stop using carrier pigeons. So let's talk about how you do that. We're going to talk about some very specific strategies that hopefully you can use. You could even go off and use them now, but don't miss anything on this call. All right, so using blogs for advocacy. I know a lot of us have blogs, and we do post information on that, regular information about our museums on that on a probably a daily basis. But consider posting some advocacy information. Now, the one thing I want to mention is that sometimes I know that people are a little nervous about advocating in their official position associated with the museum. And basically, I think that, first of all, the posting can be a very nonpartisan, kind of general example. And let me use public broadcasting as an example of this. As you might have heard, and as I'm sure you all are in a similar situation, there's been some efforts recently to eliminate funding for public broadcasting. But stations are, even though they receive federal funds, they are allowed to post basic information about what's happening on it. Maybe they can't send a link to an action alert, but they can post some of that basic information and say, for more information, go to this particular site. You could also consider posting a recap of today's session, for example. This is completely nonpartisan. It's basically educational information, so don't feel uncomfortable about that. Also, if it's a really big concern, you've got personal pages, many of you, as we saw from the opening poll, so that might also be another resource for you to post some of this information. It also is important to use this information to connect with legislators and staff. And if you've been on a call with me before, you know that one of my key things is to ask them to do something specific. And a great ask in the social media world is to sign up for our RSS feed. So I would go to the staff people that you have connections with, let them know what your blog's RSS feed is, and basically what that means is your blog entries will come into their email, so it will actually be, it is pushed into their email, but they sign up for it. And again, they will probably get that information. They may not read it all very closely, but you're kind of just sending an impression to them every once in a while about the great work that you're doing in their community. So, and usually the staff will say, oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that, because they don't want to say no to you for something that easy. So some examples, I went through, did some searches on the internet, and found some blogs that I think are fabulous. I love the Exploratorium because I grew up in California. So, and you'll see that there's some, there's some great information here on what's going on in the museum. And this is exactly the kind of information that you should be relaying to legislators and their staff so they can see what you're doing to provide information for the community. And this is also the kind of thing that you can use to post advocacy information, even if it's just something basic like, we'll be participating in Museums Advocacy Day. Here's some more information about that. That's a completely legitimate thing to let your constituents know, the people reading the blogs know that you're involved with. Another example, Small Museum Association. You'll see that this one, the reason why I picked it is because it was such a wonderful example of someone commenting on how they had the privilege of attending a free webinar. And of course, there was nice things said, but I'm not focusing on that. I'm saying this is a great example of something that you can do to post something about what happened even on today's call. So this is a really good example of using a blog for advocacy. Of course, since I used to work for Earl Blumenauer from Portland, Oregon, I had to go look up the I Heart Art Portland blog. And you'll see that there's some great information here on what's happening at the museum, and even some things about upcoming workshops that you can highlight these with elected officials and their staff and ask them if this might even be something that they'd be willing to stop by and attend. So another good example of how you might be able to enhance your blogs with some advocacy information. All right, so those are blogs. I'm going to turn to Twitter next. I just want to double check, though, and see if we have any questions at this point. And I do have a question. What's the best way to start a blog, WordPress, Blogspot, etc.? I tend to think that there's 3 big options you should look at: WordPress, TypePad, and Blogspot. The reason is because they're all sort of set up to make it very easy for you. WordPress, a lot of people find is the best, but take a look at all 3 of those. See what interface works best for you, which one's the least confusing, and frankly, just go with that one. And you might also want to check with other folks in the museum community to see what they're using and what they find most successful. All right, to continue to stop using carrier pigeons, I would look at Twitter. And it's great to use some of your existing feeds if you have them to deliver advocacy messages. And you can simply through those provide a link to AAM's action alerts. So you could do a very quick 140-character feed that just says, hey, this is going on. People should be communicating. Even if you don't want to say people should be communicating with your legislators, you could just say this is what's happening and put in the URL. I know these are a lot of characters. A lot of people use a site like tinyURL to shorten that into something that will fit into a Twitter feed easier. And I also know that AAM has a Twitter feed and has a hashtag that they use. It's hashtag Museums Advocacy to provide some information on what's going on advocacy with particular museums, and to make sure that they're capturing information about what you all are working on with museums advocacy. A great example of this was a campaign that we worked on with National Public Radio that we had people, we even drafted a few little tweets because we find that if you draft things for people, they may actually use it. And through the viral marketing, we had a tweet day, and there were over 20,000 people who received the message through Twitter. Basically what we did was a variety of people actually tweeted on it, people in the public radio community. We went through and we checked the number of people who'd retweeted, how many friends they had, et cetera, and it came to over 20,000 people from, frankly, not a lot of tweets that went out. It wasn't thousands of tweets that went out. It was maybe about 100. So it was really an excellent example of how viral marketing can get the message out. Now, to show you some of this in the museum community, actually, let me make a couple quick points, too. I think it's really effective if you have legislators that have Twitter feeds, and most of them do, to sign up for it. And this can, again, happen at the local, state, or federal level. All you need to do is you go to Twitter, you search on that legislator, you can find their feed, and then you start to read some of the communications that they're sending out. And it gives you good information on what the legislator is interested in. It also tells you when they're going to be in the community, when their upcoming town halls are, et cetera. And frankly, sometimes the legislators send out something that's completely inappropriate, and it's fun to watch them try to get that back, which they can never do. Also, a tweet day is a really, really great way to kind of concentrate your efforts on Twitter to, again, suggest 3 or 4 Twitter messages. Let your friends, your trustees, your board, everyone know, hey, we're going to have a tweet day on this specific day. Ask them to send out the messages on those days, and you'll be shocked at how much that builds and spirals into a lot of people getting that message on that particular day. Now again, because I love going and looking at museum websites, I went onto Twitter and I did some searching on this, and I found the Brooklyn Museum, which has got some great tweet feeds here. I love the bio, a gaggle of Brooklyn Museum staffers tweet here. They've got everyone involved. And this is an example of how they shorten a URL so it can fit into the 140 characters. The nice thing about this is, again, they have 139,000 followers. And so when they send out a tweet message, sure, not all of those people are reading it closely, but that's the number of people that they're reaching. Imagine the power if you sent out a message where you said, this is going on in the U.S. Congress, here's some more information here. Even if 10% of these people clicked on that link, you'd get 13,000 people that were clicking on the link and perhaps learning a little bit more about the issue. Another great Twitter feed, and I know many of you on the call also have great Twitter feeds, and I would love to go to all of them, but I can't, so I also found the Whitney Museum. But if you want to send to the Q&A box or the chat box your own Twitter feed, I'm happy to share those with others as well. So this is, again, another example of a tweet feed, and this is, again, another situation where you can send this out to the 127,000 people that are following the Whitney Museum. So that's Twitter. And again, I would just highlight sometimes people feel uncomfortable using their official feed as something that would be sending out advocacy messages. I'm sure that many of you also have personal feeds, and if that's a real issue, go ahead and send things out on your personal feed, because it will still get out to far more people than you realize. All right, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great example of a way to find the grass tops. I'm getting a lot of questions from people. How do I find the people in my community who are really going to be active on these issues? How do I get people to be better engaged? And so I want to give you some examples of that. But first of all, I want to make sure I've addressed a question here, which is, do you think we should try to incorporate the blog into our website or do a separate one? I think people do both. I tend to think that finding a way to incorporate it but not having it be a lot of clicks to get to the blog is effective. There are all of the tools I talked about, WordPress, TypePad, Blogspot, etc. They have little feeds that you can put on the front page of your site that shows what's happening with the blog, and then people can see something interesting and click on that. I tend to think it's good to try and drive people to one place, to have it not be a completely separate identity. But if people have different experiences on that, that would be great to hear. The only time I think it makes sense to have it a separate identity is if you're going to have a lot of different people from the community commenting on the blog, or your friends groups or your trustees or that sort of thing. All right, so LinkedIn, and I just want to highlight a couple things here. First of all, AAM has a LinkedIn page, which if you're not familiar with it, I want to, you can go to just the main website, the American Association of Museums. They have all the lovely little icons for Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And so you click on this, and you'll be getting to the American Association of Museums group, and you would just simply click join, and you would be part of that group, and you'll see the group is open to everyone. So it's a great place to identify different museum issues and some of the policy issues that are going on. Now, the nice thing about LinkedIn, besides the important effort to connect with AAM's page, is that first, you get all these updates on network activities. One of the things I love to do is to use this for research on the people that you're trying to connect with. So if someone wants to type in the name, let's use a federal legislator as an example. So if someone wants to type in the name of a federal legislator into the Q&A box, I'm going to use that as an example of the connections that you can find and that you'd be surprised by. And while I'm waiting for someone to type one in, I'm actually going to just give you the example of Nancy Pelosi. Let's see if we can find her. So you'll see here that as I do that particular research, obviously you'll find a different Nancy Pelosi, but you'll see that there are a number of people, and the reason why I know this is because you'll see that all of these are in Washington, D.C. This one's not, but probably used to work for Nancy Pelosi. San Francisco Bay Area, that's going to be Nancy Pelosi's specific district. What surprises me when I do this is I see how many people are second-degree connections. In other words, I know someone that they know. And so if I want to get to this, if I wanted to get to Nancy Pelosi, I could contact one of these people that I already know and ask them if they would be willing to try and connect me with her or her office. Now, usually these are people who've worked in her office, who've interned in her office. It simply means that Nancy Pelosi is mentioned in their resume or in their online bio in some way. But again, if you really want to find someone who's connected to a specific legislator, this is an excellent way to do it. It can also be very useful, frankly, for fundraising. If you're trying to hit a particular target, go to LinkedIn, type in their name. You will probably have people in your network that knows that person well, and everyone who is able to connect to that person through someone that they already know is going to be a lot more effective in getting their message across to that person. All right, so that's Twitter. Now, another way to stop using carrier pigeons. Obviously, Facebook. No social media program would be anywhere close to effective if we weren't talking about Facebook. Now, the interesting thing about Facebook is that I remember several years ago it used to be all MySpace, but now it's all Facebook. And one of the key things, one of the fun things to do on Facebook is to find your legislators, go to their website, and quote-unquote like them. You don't have to actually like them in real life, but you can click on a little button that says like, and again, it's like signing up for their Twitter feed. You get all kinds of basic information about what they're voting on, what their perspectives are on certain issues, when they're going to be in the district, and it's like you're being pulled into their world and you're getting a lot of information that will help you when you want to advocate at them on some particular museum issue. We also talked about AAM's Facebook page. We'll just go quickly to that page. An excellent, excellent resource for information on what's going on in the museum community. So I'd encourage you to take a look at this. Now, I also want to show you, if we wanted to give you an example of how we would go and like a legislator. I'm going to use my old boss, Earl. Well, actually, he's not a good example because I've already liked him. Let's use, who has a legislator that they'd like us to look up on Facebook? If someone wants to type into the Q&A box a specific legislator, that would be great. And in the meantime, while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to type in, oh, we got Susan Davis. All right. She might be a popular name. Susan Davis. Congresswoman Susan Davis. There we go. So you'll find Congresswoman Susan Davis. You'll see some of the information that she's posting on her website. And this is the like button that you would press. You would press this button. I'm not going to. It's not that I don't like Susan Davis, but she's not my legislator. So, but you can click on that, and that will start getting her feeds into your Facebook page, and so you get some information about what she's working on. All right, let's go to some examples. Oh, let me give you another quick point. Like we talked about with the tweet day, consider having a Facebook wall posting day with advocates. So you might not do it all on the same day. You might just have a social media day. But if you give them very short little things that they can post on their wall, asking them, of course, to personalize it. But again, that message spreads out to every single person that they have in their Facebook network, and it just spreads like wildfire from there. Some examples of Facebook pages. We showed you the American Association of Museums. I love the Sewell Belmont House and Museum here in Washington, D.C., and you'll see 3 of my friends do as well. And you get little posts that they have. This is a great example right here. Happy birthday, Shirley Chisholm, first African-American Congresswoman. And that's, a point where you can say, Congress is doing some interesting things on museums, and here's a link that you can follow to see what's happening on that, where they link up to the Speak Up for Museums page, that directly to that action page that I showed you earlier. Some other examples, I guess I was looking in the D.C. area because I found the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museums. One of the things I wanted to highlight in looking at all of these different issues was that this is both a large and small tool, that you don't have to be one of the really big museums to use this. You can be one of the smaller museums who, you may not have 100 people or 1,000 people on your Facebook page. This one's lucky because they have 2,000. But you can still utilize this as a tool to do some of the outreach that is important. And then I decided to pick a big one, so I picked MoMA. And I'm sorry, the Met. I didn't pick MoMA, I picked the Met. And you'll see that there are 362,000 people on this. Surprisingly, it's one friend likes this who is a friend of mine from Australia, so I'm not sure what's up with that. But you'll see they have a featured artwork of the day. And again, it's not just a matter of posting things about advocacy, but if you were to convince legislators and staff to like this page on Facebook, then they are starting to see the featured artwork of the day every single day, and they start to recognize what the value is that the particular museum brings to the constituents that they represent. All right, so that's another point of stop using carrier pigeons. One of the final points is to look at YouTube, which, as I understand it, is taking over the world. And you'll see there that one of the key things there is to notify, again, as we've talked about, legislators and staff of any new and relevant postings. And I'm not actually going to click on these because I think we've done enough clicking. Hopefully you all know to go to youtube.com to get any new video and pictures. But I think one of the great things you can do with this is to put together a Show Your Museum Day. And it can either be videos or it can be photos. And you can use this not only to get your particular constituents engaged, trustees, friends, et cetera, but also to let legislators and staff know, here's images of what's going on at the museums in your community. And one of the key things that they want to know is how does the work you do impact the people that they represent. And through these types of very visual images and messages, you can get that information out to them about the connections to the people in their district. So I want to take a minute and just ask folks to type into the Q&A box what some of the tools are that they use in the social media world to get some of their messages across, and what are some of the ones that you're thinking now might be a good resource for advocacy. And we'll take a moment to have folks type some of those in. And while we're doing that, I do have a question about how would you use Facebook as an educational tool in museums? I think that is a great question, and I think there's some fabulous examples out there. A couple of things that immediately come to mind would be to connect with schools and see if you can get students to either post on their own Facebook pages, or to provide information. You could provide information to teachers to get them to utilize some of the Facebook tools in their classrooms. Along those lines, obviously, if you're going to do an educational tour, bring students in, have all of that posted on Facebook, particularly as an event page on Facebook. So those are a couple quick ideas, and as I come up with more, I'll let you know. So we've got a couple quick points here on what people are using. Facebook would like to do more with YouTube and blog. We're using blog and Facebook and using Twitter when the new museum is open. I think that's great. I've got a question here which I think is a good one about how do you get older people to engage in social media. I think you'd be surprised at how many older people actually are already engaged in social media. People over 35 is the fastest growing and extremely quick growing. It's the fastest growing demographic on Facebook. So I think one of the first steps would be to take a look at the folks that you're trying to engage and see if they're already on Facebook. You will be shocked, absolutely shocked at how many actually are. Then the other point is that you sometimes need to think about how you can meet people in their own communication environment. So you may have some older folks who aren't as comfortable with social media, but you will find that a lot of them love to post pictures of their grandchildren or to review pictures of their grandchildren on Flickr or Photo Bucket or any of those particular photo sites. So show them, hey, you like to do this. Here's some examples of photos from our museum that you could also connect to. So maybe they're not going to post on Facebook, maybe they're not going to have a Twitter feed, but they might be doing some of these other things in their daily life that they don't always recognize are social media techniques. Another thing I find to be effective is to do a workshop with your friends group where maybe they bring in a laptop connected to a projector and just show some of the folks who are a little nervous about social media how it all works. So I think those are some ideas to engage older people. It's always a tough question for me because my 90-year-old aunt has a blog, so I think they're always, wow, very engaged. Couple other points here. A lot of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Someone mentioning Foursquare, which is a location-oriented one, which I think is a great resource because people can let others know when they're going to the museum or when they're at the museum. And we've got a lot of folks who are using Facebook and Twitter to announce and promote exhibitions, special events, and studio classes. Again, the nice thing about these events is you can invite legislators and their staff, and you don't need to recreate something. You can simply utilize an event that you're already doing. All right, our third strategy is to give up some control. Now, I know this might make people a little nervous because, especially when it comes to the advocacy efforts, we like to have our messages be very, very specific. And I think there is sort of a common myth that policy issues are very complicated. Friends, trustees, and staff can't explain them without our exact language. But I think the key to social media is that people need to have their own personal conviction and connection on these particular issues. Their messages to their legislators are not going to be effective if they aren't their personal messages. And the nice thing about social media as well is that it's all about user-generated content. So it's not simply, I gave some examples of where you give them some tweet feed examples, you give them some Facebook examples. They also need to they will often take that and personalize it. I can say that for the NPR campaign we did, I don't think one person actually took the exact language of our Twitter feed, but they did know what some of the key facts were and the key messages, and they incorporated that into a personalized message that they wanted to send. But you do have to be prepared to give up some of that control because they aren't simply forwarding your message. They're creating their own message that they're going to be posting personally on their pages. And so we need to recognize that that's going to be something that's very important for them. Encouraging involvement from the beginning. I love the comment about someone setting up a Twitter feed for their new museum. And I think as you build that social media network, you'll find that as long as you post maybe at the beginning every day and kind of get people really, really engaged, then after a while you don't have to do it every day. You don't have to be obsessive. It can be every 2 to 3 days or that sort of thing. But really get them engaged from the very beginning of you setting up your social media pages. Also, I think it's important to recognize that part of giving up control is going to be allowing advocates to choose some of their own priorities, especially in this next Congress and in many of the next state legislative sessions. You'll probably have a lot of issues that you're going to want people to advocate on. Most of it, I assume, will be funding. Some of it might be censorship issues, as we've seen here in Washington, D.C. lately. You might have a wide range of things. I know a lot of museums are working on how they can get more school kids into their museums and what the opening and closing dates are for the schools. So when you post that information to your Facebook page or your Twitter page, you need to be prepared that they're going to pick the things that are most important to them. And while you can highlight certain things as being particularly urgent, they will choose what is going to be most personally relevant to them, and that's a good thing because then they'll be able to create messages that are more personalized and hence more effective in influencing legislators. So given all that, so we've talked about some very specific strategies. We talked about strategy number 1, which was to cultivate that powerful 1%. We talked about how we can best stop using carrier pigeons. And so we talked about some blogs for advocacy where people could post action alerts, online trainings and announcements, blog about museum staff, ask friends to blog, etc. We've talked about the tools that American Association of Museums uses, such as Twitter and Facebook. We've talked about other ways to stop using carrier pigeons like LinkedIn, Twitter. So as even a very first step, I'd encourage everyone, if you haven't done a lot of social media, to at least go to the American Association of Museums site and sign up for some of their resources, because it will help you get your feet wet in this sometimes confusing world. So to close up, I want to make sure that everyone's gotten at least one good resource here. And so I want to ask you what you are going to do next with this information. And so I'm launching a poll, and if you respond to one of these things, it means that you will have a contract to do it. No, I'm kidding. But hopefully it's, you've gotten some ideas about a couple things you might do. Are you going to write a blog entry on advocacy? Are you going to friend your legislators on Facebook? Are you going to tweet about policy issues? Are you going to research your legislators on LinkedIn? Are you going to be brave and do all of the above and more? Or have you actually done any of these things while we've been on the call? I always find that you know, people get on the call and then they start jumping off. I'm like, what's going on? And it's usually because they're going to Facebook to actually undertake some of the activities we've addressed. So we've got 61% of the votes in. I do have a question here about the advocacy conviction connection, and I realize that perhaps I didn't explain that very well. What I meant by that was that the most effective messages from your advocates are going to be ones that they personally believe strongly in, that they have a conviction about. And so as we talk about giving up control, sometimes that means that we need advocates to communicate message that they personally are very connected to, that they are very committed to in a way. So that's what the advocacy conviction connection is. The most effective advocacy is based on someone having a strong conviction about the importance of a particular policy issue. All right, we've got 65% of the votes in, and I hope that doesn't mean that 35% of us are going to do nothing. Maybe it means that a lot of us have done a lot of these things. And if you have done a lot of these things and you've got resources for everyone else, that would be very useful. I'm going to wait for the next few votes to come in before I let you all off into the world. All right, we've got most of the votes in, so I'm going to go ahead and share the results. And we've got folks who are going to write a blog. A lot of us are going to friend our legislators on Facebook. And again, you don't actually have to be their friend. Remember that. We don't have tweeters yet, but hopefully we will in the future. Researching legislators on LinkedIn and all of the above and more. They'll probably tweet. All right. So hopefully you've gotten a couple ideas. I'm going to just check to see if we have any questions at this point. I think we've addressed questions. Again, if you have questions after the call, please do let us know. You'll be receiving an email, a follow-up email with a survey on it, and that information really helps us as we try to provide the most useful online training sessions for you. And what other resources are available? Museums Advocacy Day 2011 is February 28th through March 1st. And really, it's such an important thing to physically come to Washington, D.C. if you can. It sends that personal message about how important it is to you and your museum. If you can't attend, try to get someone for your museum or coalition to go. Plus, we always love to see you. Go to speakupformuseums.org to send letters to your legislators. There's a great resource on there where you can take some of the materials that the American Association of Museums has put together and personalize it for your particular museum and send that along. And obviously, the AAM Government Relations team is here to help you, so do feel free to contact them. Here's the way to contact them, and you'll see you've got their email addresses. There's also the contact information online. And again, this PowerPoint will be available after the session, so you'll be able to access all of that directly. And with that, I do have one last question. How many people are on the call? We had 50 registered for the call, so I think about 40 got on, which is an excellent percentage. And again, this is going to be available for you all to, a recording is going to be available for you all to share with others. So use those social media tools to get the link out about the recording, and that will be one of your first steps to make the world a better place for museums. So thank you so much for all being on the call, and we look forward to you being on a future one. And I think you're ready to go out into the world. So I hope to see you or talk to you soon. Take care.